Women literally create life from liquid. Like, think about that. Every artist, scientist, king, president, billionaire, athlete, inventor, and spiritual teacher who has ever existed, every human that has ever existed, started inside of a woman's body. And yet, somehow, most women grow up being taught that we are the less powerful sex. Like, the older I get, the less that makes sense. Because when I start looking into it closely, I realize something. And that is that we haven't just been excluded from power, we've been taught to overlook some of the most powerful things about ourselves: our intuition, our creativity, our sensuality, our ability to create life and connection and beauty and meaning and transformation. And if you've ever felt like you've done everything right and you still don't feel powerful or fully alive or fulfilled the way you thought you would, this conversation might explain why. For most of my life, I thought I had like a pretty evolved view of women in power. Like, I've been a feminist for decades. I believe women can do fucking anything. I've spent years helping women reclaim confidence and pleasure and desire and aliveness. And yet, it wasn't until really pretty recently that I realized that my definition of power was still almost entirely based on masculine metrics like achievement, productivity, money, status, accomplishment, results, output. And the weird part is that, like, I didn't even realize I was doing it. I don't know if you can relate to this, Barb, but like, I didn't even realize that that's like the operating system that I'm still trying to undo, that that's the water we swim in, and that's the culture tells us that's what power looks like. And it suddenly dawned on me, like literally within the last few weeks, that some of the most powerful things about being a woman do not show up on the scoreboards that most of us are keeping, right? Like, even now I catch myself doing it. I'll do an embodiment practice and I'll be like, okay, but what result did that really produce, right? Because it's not like necessarily this instantaneous, I just now manifested, 70 new clients in my dream house. Like, it doesn't work exactly like that. But I realize that that's because I'm measuring feminine power with a masculine ruler. And so, to kick off this conversation about essentially why so many women don't realize how powerful they are, I'm going to ask you this question, which is, when did you first start questioning your own definition of power? Like, was there a moment where you realized that what you'd been taught power looked like and what actually made you feel powerful were not the same
Um,
thing?
yeah, I mean that's like two questions in one, so I'll like answer one and two. So,
Yeah.
I think I started questioning power because, ironically, I had a lot of contrast growing up where I felt really fucking powerless. I didn't grow up in a
Yeah.
home where we even talked about power. Like, Marta and I are both Russian speakers. That's our first language. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, is there a word in Russian for power? Like, I don't know. It wasn't a word that was used or even talked about in my home.
Yeah.
And, um,
Hmm.
but my lived experience was powerlessness. My mom struggled with mental illness. And as a little girl, I didn't have the language for what was happening. I just knew the feeling in my body, and like feeling like I couldn't change anything. I couldn't make it better. I couldn't control things. I couldn't fix things. I felt helpless, like I had no choices, like I was a victim of the
Yep.
circumstances, and I just had to like put on a smile no matter what was going on and struggle,
Yeah.
like just struggle through it. And there, like, power was like obsolete. And I think that's where so many women disconnect from their own power. It starts in childhood. Like, we are taught that we are powerless in this world because we think power is about controlling the outside world, like rather than focusing in on what we actually can do, what we can create. We're always looking for others, and we're looking for those like places of like, how can I change their experience versus change my own? And it's it's
Mhm.
lose lose. I know from personal experience. So then, to answer the other question was like, I think you said, where was the moment you realized that you'd been taught what power looked like and what actually made you feel powerful
Mhm.
wasn't the same thing. And I think the biggest moment for me was learning the difference between what being a victim is and what being
Mhm.
responsible is. And so I want to be really clear when I say this, because I find a lot of people, women, men, everyone, don't really have the distinction in their body. And it's a big one. And I don't think it's by accident we don't have this distinction. I think it's definitely a function of the patriarchy. And responsibility gets really misunderstood, especially for women. So responsibility, when I learned
Mhm.
this, and it was deep, it was profound. Responsibility is not blame, and it's not shame. When you are blaming, when you are shaming, whether it's yourself or someone else, that's actually the thing that's keeping you in that powerless victim state. So it's not looking back at a painful experience
Mhm.
and saying, I created this, so it's all my fault. That's victim mode. That's victim frequency. That keeps you stagnant in your life where you are, and you are powerless to do anything about it. Responsibility is like that sigh in your body of like possibility. So it's the moment you can actually take your power back and say, okay, this happened. So what? Now what? Now what can I create from this? And that distinction changed my entire life, because when I was in victim consciousness, I was unconsciously waiting for the outside world to change so I could feel better, so I could feel powerful. I was waiting for someone to apologize. I was waiting for someone to choose me. I was waiting for life to finally give me permission. And like, I could die on a hill, you know? Like that shit is not like waiting
Yeah.
is a function of what we're taught, conditioning of like women just wait. We wait around. And that's like it's not. But the truth
Yeah.
was my power was already always there, even in the moments when I couldn't access it yet. And then also learning about consent like later on took that even deeper for me, because consent is actually one of the greatest expressions of power. It's like my yes matters, my no matters, my desire matters. My body is not just something that life happens to. My body is where I create from. And I think that that awakening is what so many women are craving. They're realizing you were never here to control everything around you. You can't control it. Like so much of our lives are out of control. The weather, you go to the airport, you have no control. Like there's just traffic. There's so many things that we function in this like, oh, we can control, but we have zero control over most things in our life. Like that's life doing its thing, and it's like, can we be like do what like control what we can and know the difference, right? And then you were here to remember that you are the creatrix within you, right? Like this is what I'm here to create, and
Mhm.
then there's a moment of I'm gonna give it up to the universe to co-create with me, which is a big one, because when you're taught to control everything outside of you, you don't believe, you don't have faith. You say maybe you think, okay, I need to have faith, but you're not really embodying that. So then you're not really in the creatrix
Yeah.
mode. And that's where your power has always been, and it's huge, it's major. It is like you have more
Yeah.
power in your pinky than you could ever even imagine what you actually tap in. Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. And I love that you're bringing this up, because it's interesting to me to hear you answer that question, because you're coming at it from a different angle than how I've been thinking about it lately, and I love it because that's a beautiful piece that I wasn't even looking at, and it's so true. So I'm so glad you said that. And I think that the fact that I didn't realize how powerful I am, how powerful women are. The reason why we're doing this episode, because so many women don't realize how powerful they are, is in part because what I said at the beginning, what we're taught power means is this very masculine patriarchal like version, right? It's control, it's status, it's money, it's achievement, it's productivity. It's like, what have you done for me lately? And I think for a large part of my younger life, I bought that. Like I drank that Kool-Aid and I was like, okay, so
Right.
intuition is not valuable. Beauty is it's this is all frivolous. This is all girl stuff and it's frivolous. And like what I need to focus on is like, what have I done, that's productive lately? What have I produced?
Right.
What have I achieved? What can I point to? What can I put on my resume? And that really fucked with me because as a result, I spent so much time like living in my masculine, right? Like trying to play by those rules because that's the only way to have power in this culture. Not true, and we're debunking that here, but I just wanted to bring that to the conversation because if you're watching this or listening to this and you're resonating with what Barbara said, that you've like been in like the victim place and you feel disempowered, or you've spent so much time trying to own power in the masculine way because that's what the culture is doing, all of that is welcome, all of that is
And
true,
it all
and we're going
falls
to
in
flip the
on
script
one
on all
another
that in this.
because the thing is that what does the patriarchy want for women? You know, if you are the creatrix, if you're really tapped in to that power, that's like the womb, that's the energy. If you are really the responsible, the creator, and like that has been taught for us to like ignore and forget so that they can have power
Yeah.
over us. So we
Yeah.
don't know what consent is. So when they're like, do this, do that, we just say yes, even if it's a no, and
Mhm.
we don't even like it. We get upset about it. Our bodies react, they get sick. And that keeps us in victim place because then they can exercise power over us. That's really how it's like, it goes hand in
Right.
hand. Like, that was, I mean, I didn't say that in the beginning, but it's like, yeah, like like if there's like, you know, when I think of like my old paradigm of power, it's like politicians in suits that look like, you know, white men,
Yeah.
or
They
mafia
don't.
bosses. Like it's like, you know, like
Yeah.
world leaders from white countries are like or people with, you know, world leaders with access to nuclear weapons who are men. That's what like the
Yeah.
old
Yeah.
paradigm in me actually is like, and it feels scary in my body when I think about that. They freak me out. And that's the point. That's what they want, is to
Yeah.
freak me out, because then when I'm freaked out and I'm scared, I'm the victim. I'm like, oh my God, they have the nuclear weapons. I mean, it's a perfect example. What am I going to do when they drop the bomb and like, where am I going to take my family? I mean, it's literally that, right? And I could sit there and watch the news all day and freak out and then not do anything because I'm terrified about one day one psycho man who's in power is going to press that button. Or I could be like, fuck that. I still have power right now in this moment. And I'm going to choose to exercise it and live my life the best way that I can, no matter what is going on outside of me. And that's what I was saying, is like, that's like
Yeah.
when I realized, like, wait, I still have fucking power here. I don't have to sit here and fucking worry and feel freaked out. I mean, sometimes I talk to people who watch the news constantly and they're like a mess, you know?
Yeah. But even if you're not a
Yeah.
news junkie, even if you avoid that, I think the the things we are taught in this culture, the things we see modeled, like even if we're not taught it directly, but the way the system works, like the water we're swimming in, what we've inherited, the definition of power we have inherited, I think is, that rest doesn't count, pleasure doesn't count, beauty doesn't count, intuition isn't real, it doesn't count. Receiving, you can receive stuff after you have suffered sufficiently, okay? Or you produce some sort of measurable result that deserves a reward. And once I started really like trying to unpack this for myself and try to understand why I was still like second guessing my own power because of this conditioning, right? Like dismissing my own power. I like couldn't stop seeing it, which is why we're doing this episode. And I think it's also important to acknowledge that as women, we have been disempowered by the system in many ways, like over history, right? So like just taking like a few data points, not getting too deep into this, but like we couldn't vote until 1920, right? That's like just over 100 years ago. That's not that long. I think it was the 1800s or so when women, for the first time, at least in this country, were started to be considered independent legal individuals, right? Like before, you would get married and you'd be absorbed into your husband's like his legal status, but you couldn't yourself own
Not till the
property or sign a
1970s. You
contract
couldn't, a woman in
or
the 1970s couldn't buy real estate. I mean, I used to be a real estate broker, and one of my colleagues, their mom came from the Philippines in the 70s, and she was very wealthy. Could not, she had the money, she had the funds. Nobody would sell to her. It was
yeah,
illegal for a woman to buy property on her own, even if she had the money. That is insane. Like
yeah, yeah,
1970s. No, they couldn't open credit cards without a man. Like there was no like this is
yeah,
like
yeah,
I mean, I was only born, I'm born in the 80s, you know? Like that's crazy to me.
yeah. No, it's in our lifetime. Or think about like access to education, right? For a very long time, women were denied not just higher education, but let's just focus on that for a moment. Denied higher education, not because the argument was we didn't want it. The argument was we were not capable of it. And so for much of history, women were excluded from universities. I think it was Harvard didn't admit women until the 70s or something like that. Yale, Princeton, it was 1969 before they were co-ed. And the argument, again, wasn't just that women shouldn't attend. It was like physicians and scholars literally argued that women intellectually were unsuited for advanced education. Like some doctors actually said it would damage
Right,
our
right,
reproductive
right. Thank you
systems.
so
Like
much for
they
looking out
really
for
said
our
this.
reproductive systems. You're so good at it.
Like what the then there's like science and medicine and all this stuff, right? Like through much of history, women served as midwives and healers and herbalists and birth attendants. And then in the 1700s to 1800s, when medicine became increasingly professionalized and credentialed, the new institutions were, duh, overwhelmingly male, which meant women were excluded from medical schools, from professional societies, from licensing systems, right? And so knowledge that had been passed woman to woman for generations just became like superstition, like dismissed as like silly girl things, witchcraft, right? While male dominated medicine became like the recognized authority to this day. And of course, the witch trials very closely connected to that, right? That basically any woman that was considered dangerous was labeled a witch. And dangerous meant she was a healer, she was a midwife, she was just an older woman that didn't have a man attached to her. She had her own property. She was in some way unconventional. She did not play by the fucking rules that they wanted her to play by, so
And
they
she had
fucking killed
power.
her.
I mean, that's the point. She had power. She had power. She had
Need to
power.
take
Like, she could actually make a difference. Her gifts could make a difference. That's the thing. What, like, that woman that you're talking about, the healer woman, was connected to her gifts, to her innate gifts. It's
yeah,
the exact forms of feminine power that society still dismisses. Um, she was
yeah,
connected to that. So that witch woman that they labeled as a witch was in her power, right? She was actually healing and making a
right.
difference. And it's like,
Ah,
how can we make that wrong and dangerous so we can strip her of her power? So now she is actually suffering because she can't birth, she can't create, she can't be the one that's responsible for supporting society in a way that actually uplifts and gets them healthy. Now she's victimized
yeah,
by this whole system, right? Because she's using her intuition. Because she's using like
right, exactly. The dangerous and
sensuality, like these
scary and
are
all
all
that
the
stuff.
forms, right? These are
But
the intuition, it's sensuality, it's emotional intelligence, it's our ability to create harmony. You know, women like, and this is also, you know, there are forms of like positive, healthy masculine power, but what's happened is that it's been turned into toxic and it's muddied the waters for all of us, and we have, adopted the toxic. I myself have been in times where I've like totally very aware of like, wow, this is like toxic masculine power in me. Like I'm exhibiting it right now because like our ability to create harmony, women, the feminine wants harmony, wants like community, wants to create that. And that is a beautiful, beautiful feminine power and the ability to inspire. Like a woman could just walk into a room and change the atmosphere because of how she is. And it's like,
Yeah.
that's not usually common in a man.
Right, which is again brings me back to the point of like the definition of power that we have inherited devalues the things that women are naturally really good at and powerful. Like that is where our power is, and it's been defined as not real, not relevant, not valuable, not part of this system. And like you mentioned bodily autonomy and like consent and your yes mattering and your no mattering, and like talk about a place where we have been disempowered intentionally for a long time, where we're still
Wow.
struggling, right? Like Roe v. Wade was just overturned a couple years ago after 50 years of having, you know, abortion rights preserved for women. Like that in my lifetime became a thing and was taken back. But like, here's a crazy one. When I started doing my research and going down this rabbit hole, did you know that throughout much of the 20th and into the 21st century, um, medical schools would have their medical like doctors in training would perform pelvic exams on women who were under anesthesia for another procedure, nothing related to this, without their consent or fucking knowledge. They wouldn't even tell them. This was still
Mm-hmm.
happening in the
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it didn't actually start being banned. Like state by state bans have started to pop up in the 2000s and 2010s, but some states even like 10 years ago, this was still a thing. So like when you don't have control over how people interact with your fucking body, of course we feel disempowered. Of course there's like that thing. And it's not just history, right? It's still
It's
happening
not
now.
even
Roe
just
v. Wade
happening.
being
That's like the macro. I mean, on an individual level,
yeah.
like I was literally just at a retreat and I was sharing a room with a friend. And I mean, women have no, I teach this all the time. My initial like consult call, like I am like drilling consent into them without them even knowing because I am like so hell bent on a woman really getting into her body, what the true sovereignty is. Um, like I'm at this retreat, I'm staying with a friend, is sharing a room. I like, I leave the room, I come back, she's wearing my necklace. Then she's wearing my sweatpants. She like goes through my things and I'm like, babe, we need to have a talk. We need to clear. Um,
Mhm.
it's driving me crazy when you do that. And it's not because I mind that you're wearing my things, but you didn't ask consent. And she was like, whoa. uh, like that's how deep it is. Boundaries and consent, like on a daily basis we operate that way and no one's saying anything. So it's like if you feel comfortable to go and take whatever without permission, that's what consent is, asking for permission. Of course they're doing this on the
Yeah.
macro, and because women don't have the distinction in their body, they don't even know how to exercise it.
Totally. Yeah. Right. And like the real issue in even in sharing all these examples isn't rights. Like I'm not here. This isn't an episode about women's rights, but it is an episode about like what we've learned
Exactly.
to dismiss, right? How we have taken like these things that are innate for us, that come naturally to us, that are part of like what makes the feminine feminine: intuition, beauty, sensuality, softness, creativity, desire, surrender, all these things. We have put them in the category of frivolous, secondary, less important. That's the world order that we live in. Whether you recognize this consciously or you are just recognizing it as you hear me say it, that's the water we're all swimming in. And so the question I want to pose to you is like, what if we've been measuring ourselves, women, with the wrong scoreboard? right? What if power isn't only force and domination and hierarchy and productivity and control? What if power is also creation,
100.
connection, magnet, right? Life force. Because women literally create life. This is the thing that got me thinking about this. This like we have a fucking portal between our legs, and the world has made us believe that we should fear it, be ashamed of it, hide it, suppress it, don't talk
Not only
about it,
that,
right?
that it's
Like,
weak. Like,
what the fuck?
we use the word pussy a lot, right? Why do we use the word pussy a lot? To reclaim
Mhm.
power. Why? Because, we live in this world where we've made penis the symbol of power, the thing that penetrates, the thing that conquers, the thing that makes things happen, right? But
Mhm.
pussy actually, and then pussy is the weak version of the penis. And we see it in culture. I like think about Sopranos, like the show The Sopranos, where it's like we use the word pussy to insult weak men. Weak men. Do you think that that is
Mhm.
how power gets stripped of us all of the time? We don't even know how valuable our pussies are. And then you're saying things like, but what is more powerful than being the vessel that can literally create and hold and grow life? And even beyond having children,
So,
because it's not just about motherhood, it's about creation. And that goes back to responsibility. If you don't know what responsibility really means, you don't know how to use the power in your body for creation, because that is one and the same responsibility. I am the creator of the life. I am the holder of the life. There's a
yeah.
deep wisdom in that part of the female body. The women have been taught to disconnect from the creative force, the knowing, the life force, because the same energy that creates human life is the energy that can create anything. It can create a new home, it can create a new relationship, it can create a new business, it can create a new version of yourself. And when a woman learns how to stop rejecting, ignoring, disconnecting from that part of herself and actually partner with it, make it valuable, tap into it. She stops trying to force life. She doesn't need to control outside of herself. She's suddenly not a victim. She learns how to birth that thing that she truly, deeply fucking desires. That is deep feminine power. And it's been dismissed because a woman who knows how powerful she is from the inside out is impossible to control. Impossible.
Yes. Very, very dangerous. Yeah. So, okay. I love that. I love that, you brought up the word pussy and how it's used as an insult, and that's so paradoxical. So let's assume for a moment that everything we, or also we'll say something like grow a pair when we want
Exactly.
someone
And
to
just
like
notice
be
our
more
language,
courageous.
how our language, and it's like
Yeah.
that is a form of what is like it's what's the word that I'm looking for? It's like when you like subliminal messaging. It's like like from childhood. It's like subliminal messages. It's like a marketing tactic. Because if that's already in you, you're
Yeah.
like, okay, my pussy is not good for anything else but making babies, and like other than it's weak, but is it like it's like it didn't even cross my mind until I got older to be like, wait, how, like, what a joke on us. How could
Right.
the pussy be used to describe the weakness of a penis owner? Like, that is
Totally.
insane. Insane.
Yeah.
He came out of a pussy.
Yeah.
It's like, this is
Yeah.
bananas.
Yeah. And that's the best one of all, that like the stories we're told about creation is that Eve came out of Adam's rib. Hello, I'm sorry, that's not possible. And also, I started the episode with this. Every human that's ever been born came out of a woman's body. So like this idea of us being somehow like less powerful, relevant, important to humanity's success is fucking
It's
insane.
like it's
It's just
so
like,
irrational. Like if you have a lot, like a rat, if you're like sitting there and you're consciously like, okay, we're gonna have this conversation. We're really gonna try to, you know, understand what this is, because again, we're not taught these concepts in school. We don't talk about it in homes, so it completely gets ignored, and then we're like bombarded with these subliminal messages of weakness. So of course, what's the,
Yes,
pussy
of
is the
course. Yep.
currency between all of us women. So if I'm disconnected from my pussy and you are disconnected from my pussy, we will never come together in community. And what's more powerful than
Yeah.
one woman who's connected to her pussy? All of us.
No, exactly. So, okay, so let's assume for a moment that everything we've talked about today is true, that we all inherited this definition of power that excludes some of the most powerful things about being a woman. Now what? Okay, because if you're still with us, I don't want you to walk away feeling just angry and frustrated. I want you to walk away with a path back home to yourself and to owning your own power. Okay. So I took notes before we started this episode. I wrote down a couple of things that I think are part of that process. Barb, I want you to jump in and share yours. But I think number one for me, and this was part of my path back to reclaiming my own power, is starting to treat my desires, things I desire, as information, not as something that's selfish or inconvenient or unrealistic or dangerous, which PS was what would happen every time I'd have like a deep desire. I'd be like, okay, that's selfish. Oh, that's not really convenient. That's not realistic. Right. Like I literally would go through that checklist. But when I started to treat my desires as important information that kind of tells me, like, this is where life wants to move. This desire isn't something I thought up here. It's like it's an it's an urge, it's a longing, it's what like my body is leaning towards, not what should I want or what makes sense or what would be productive and successful. What do I actually fucking want, even if it doesn't fall onto that list of approved, power items? That's like number one for me. And then the second one was just kind of goes hand in hand. Stop dismissing your intuition. So for me, that was a big thing. Like I would get like an intuitive hit around something and then I would second guess it. I would doubt it because when I vocalized that to others, it would get shot down. Like that's crazy. That's just, feelings aren't facts and like that kind of nonsense. And so I'd go, you know what? You're right. It's not logical. Never mind. And I started to lean towards like, what will everyone agree with? Let's pick that one. What do I know for sure? So stop dismissing your intuition. Start treating desire as information. Those are
I
my
mean,
first two.
I
What would you
think,
add to
yeah,
this
like it's
list?
the desire is the big one. The desire goes hand in hand
Yeah.
because with all of it, it's like the fastest way to disempower us is to not ask us what we want, not ask us what we need, and us buy into that. It's huge. And a woman's desire is her compass. It's where her pleasure becomes her
Yeah.
wisdom. Her turn on becomes a place where she creates from. It goes back to like the body, the pussy. So desire is, if you like, and a lot of women were taught to be like, I don't know what I really want. That is like, if you're
Yeah.
someone who's saying, I don't know what I really want, or I don't know, like, what do I want? Um, it's like you were just trained to stop listening, right? You just trained to stop listening,
Yes. Or if you become like this is what happened to me. I used to have really strong opinions and then I became
right?
low maintenance. Which we've already
Yeah,
established is not who I actually am. But like I started to, someone would be like, would you rather have this piece of pizza reheated in the microwave or in the toaster oven? And I'd be like, I don't care, whatever's easiest for you. And like maybe I didn't really care in that moment. Like how I reheat my pizza isn't like a pivotal decision, but it's emblematic of how much I had given away my power and stopped really checking
yeah,
in with, well, what do I really want? Maybe I hate microwave pizza. I don't even know because I've become so used to fitting into the mold that everyone wants me to fit into that I have lost touch with my desires. And then I wake up one morning and I'm like, why do I feel so numb and so meh about life? Well, duh, it's because I don't want anything
right.
anymore.
And
There's
you're
no
like, I
like,
don't even want anything
there's no life.
anymore, and I'm dead. And then that's where that's the victim state. That's the victim state. That's the victim.
Yes. Totally.
That's like, I don't like, no one asks me what I want. I don't want that. I don't even know what I want. You are like the victim. You're the victim of your own victimization. And it's like, it does, you have, and the thing, what we're trying to say is there's another way. You don't have to stay there. And like the
Yes,
other
yes.
thing that I was going to say is beyond the desire, um, like desire is key for this. You got to know, you got to be clear. And if you don't know what you want, get, sit down and journal on it. Start asking yourself, and it could start with basic small things. Do I want a cappuccino, or do I want a coffee? Do I want a tea instead of coffee? What do I want, versus like being an automatic for with little things that we really
Right.
right.
Or what should I want,
And
or what am I supposed to
yeah,
want? I
it's
think
like
that's how
really big,
it gets
because then you
flipped.
start to see, wait, I like, no one even asked me about this. And then stop trying to become powerful in the sense of what we were talking about, like that control thing, and realize you already are fucking powerful. It's not a question about, am I enough? Like when you're in that doubt place, which is part of the dysfunction, and it's like you are disempowered when you're like, am I enough? Did I do enough? That is, again, that is the victim, disempowered, totally out of it. And then the way to flip it, I would say, is what wants to move through me, because that's where the desire is, right? It's instead of like changing the focus from doubting, am I enough, because you're trying to prove like power through the toxic masculine game, and you're always going to lose. You're
Yeah,
never going to be
exactly.
enough through that, right? And it's really about
Totally.
enough of me isn't living, so what wants to live through me, what wants to move through me, because a woman who knows her power doesn't manipulate reality, she seduces it. She collaborates with life. She becomes the muse, the magnet, the masterpiece. And that's the work we love supporting women
Yes.
with. Remembering the parts of themselves that we're taught to hide are often exact places where their magic lives. So it's there, and it's for you to just connect
Totally.
to and just uncover. And yeah, it's there. It's there today. It's there right now when you're listening to it. If you are getting angry, if you are getting triggered, fucking good. Because that part of you
Yeah.
is like,
Well,
that's your power awakening. Like, this is resonating with you. We're speaking to your power, girl.
and if this is waking something up in you, I'm gonna give you actually the cheat code, like the fastest, best, most effective way to reclaim your power. You ready for it? I need a drum roll. Spend time with women who recognize their own power and yours. Like literally, this is where community really matters. You need more information from other women. There's most of us have plenty of information. This podcast just gave you a whole bunch more information. You need environments that reinforce a different story, right? You need an environment where desire fucking matters, where beauty fucking matters, where pleasure matters, and intuition and truth and aliveness is the focus, not productivity and status and control. That's the world we live in all the time. That's normal. You can get that 24/7. I'm talking about being in rooms with women who prioritize desire and pleasure and intuition, who will see that in you and will let you see it in themselves and will celebrate that. In fact, honestly, like this is one of the reasons why we created the Sensual Sisterhood, because we realized that women don't just need more information. We need spaces that remind us who the fuck we are. Spaces where desire isn't selfish and beauty isn't frivolous and pleasure isn't something that you have to earn and intuition isn't something that we dismiss, right? It's like we need places where being fully alive is not treated as indulgent, it's the whole purpose. Because most of us have spent decades marinating in the exact opposite message. The Sensual Sisterhood is a place where we like have this is our model. This is the power model that we embrace and espouse and encourage and celebrate. And so if today's episode gave you one thing to think about, I would say let it be this. The goal is not to become more powerful. The goal is to stop overlooking the power that's already there, right? Because the same force, as Barbara was saying, that creates life also creates connection and art and communication and businesses. And it lives inside you too, in me, in her, right? In all of us. And so the question isn't whether you have power. The question is whether you have been taught to recognize it, or someone has helped you to remember. Because that's really like where the journey begins. Just remembering that you've had this power all along. Yeah? All right, beautiful. Hopefully we'll see you inside the Sensual Sisterhood. The link to join is below if you want to check it out. Thanks for joining us for another episode. We'll see you next week. Mwah.